Hello everyone, and welcome to SUNUP. I'm Lyndall Stout. We join you today from the OSU Research Station at Lahoma to talk a little bit about this year's wheat crop that's been getting in the ground the last few weeks with Jeff Edwards, our small grains extension specialist. And Jeff, talk a little bit about what you and the colleagues are doing out here at these Lahoma plots.
Well, this is one of our larger locations, and we've expanded this year. Last year we had around 30 wheat varieties at this location that we tested. This year we're up to over 40 varieties, and we're going to do this same routine at around 24 locations around the state, carry them throughout the year and harvest next May and report the results.
So you're getting the seed in the ground, getting all ready, which is really indicative of what producers around the state are doing right now. And the conditions with the rains we've had lately, pretty good. Conditions are pretty good in most of the state. The guys in Major County might argue with that. They seem to have missed out on a lot of the rainfalls that we've had, but overall we're in pretty good shape. We're planting, it's mid-October, it's perfect time to be planting grain-only wheat. Some of the wheat that was planted a little bit earlier in the year, back in September, has emerged, but we're a little bit behind schedule in terms of the wheat that emerged for dual purpose purposes. And let's talk about that dual purpose wheat and some of the concerns that you might have or might be hearing from producers. It's a blessing that we got the wheat in September and that it did emerge, but we were a little bit behind schedule, and the wheat is small, and if we were still in mid-September we would be in good shape. But we're in mid-October. There's not a lot of time, if we have a normal winter, for that wheat to grow and catch up. So I do think we'll have wheat pasture in the state of Oklahoma, but I don't think it's going to be plentiful. Unless we have an extremely warm winter, wheat pasture could be kind of tight this year, even though there are a lot of acres that went in the ground just due to growth. And we don't like to talk about weeds always, but we really need to. What are some of the things that you are keeping an eye on? Well, one thing that I'm keeping an eye on is ALS-resistant ryegrass and Italian ryegrass with multiple forms of resistance now. Axial XL has been our go-to product for ALS-resistant ryegrass, which most of our ryegrass in Oklahoma is ALS-resistant. But the problem is that we now have ryegrass showing up in northeast Texas and in Arkansas that is resistant to Axial XL. So that means that our days could be numbered in Oklahoma in using that product to control Italian ryegrass. Still effective right now, so the key is to clean up those fields while that product is still effective, get those weeds sprayed when they're small, which means a fall application in most circumstances. Wait till they emerge, but for any weed, it's so important to kill those weeds when they're small, and that means a fall application. Okay, and then other management advice in terms of nitrogen application, we got to keep that in the loop as well? We do. This is the time of year where our producers need to be putting out those nitrogen-rich strips. That's such a great tool for us to use to estimate our nitrogen needs in the spring, but it requires a little bit of forethought, and those nitrogen-rich strips need to be going out in October, November, maybe into December, but really we're entering the prime time to get those out there in the field. Okay, and we mentioned the variety trials, you're getting things set up. You have a way for producers to kind of track that and see the progress that you're making? We do. As the variety trials are planted, we will post the variety trial plot map on our website. And these plots will have signs in them in the spring to identify the different varieties. But a lot of producers like to see them as they're emerging and keep an eye on them in the fall. The way they can do that is just go to our website and download the plot map, and they can see what every plot is planted to and evaluate those varieties throughout the year. Okay, Jeff Edwards, our small grains extension specialist, good information. And for a link to those variety trials, just go to our website, sunup.okstate.edu.
During the fall of the year, of course, is a time when many cow-calf producers with spring calving herds will be weaning the calves and then marketing those calves as we proceed into October and November. Many of those calves will be marketed in some of the value-added calf sales. And those require, of course, proper vaccination programs and that the calves are weaned for at least 45 days prior to being marketed. And some of the producers may wonder, why do we have to wait that long? Why the 45 days? Well, there's a number of studies that have been done looking at that particular item. The biggest one comes from Iowa State University. It's a 9-year study where they looked at the health of calves that were either weaned and put in the feedlot for less than 30 days, or had they been weaned, preconditioned for 30 days and longer before they were actually transported to the feedlot. What they found were those calves that were weaned for only a short period of time and then transported to the feedlot. A much higher percentage of those calves got bovine respiratory disease. About 28% of them, in fact, actually got sick, as compared to only 13%, less than half the percentage of the calves that had been weaned longer than a month became sick. Perhaps even more importantly, as they followed those calves, those that required 3 or more treatments in order to get cured from the bovine respiratory disease, 6% of the calves that had that short weaning period were actually treated 3 or more times. Only 1% of the calves that had been weaned for longer than a month needed those 3 or more treatments. So it's very apparent to me that if we want to market calves that will be healthier, do a better job for the next owner, we'd want to have those calves weaned at least 45 days prior to marketing time. And if I'm on the other end of that deal, I'm a stocker operator or a feedlot producer that's buying calves, buying those that have been weaned at least 45 days makes a lot of sense and will certainly reduce my health costs as I'm taking care of those calves. So as you're marketing calves this fall or buying calves this fall, take a good look at those value-added calf sales. I think they're a good idea for the entire beef industry. Hey, we look forward to visiting with you again next week on SUNUP's Cow-Calf Corner.
We continue now our visit to Southeast Oklahoma. Here's Austin Moore with a story on PINEMAP research.
Plants provide many obvious benefits to people. However, some of their gifts, while important, are more subtle to the eye. Oklahoma State University research specialist Randy Holman explains.
As photosynthesis takes place, the tree is absorbing carbon dioxide, and in the process it releases oxygen. So basically it's taking the carbon out of CO2 and releasing the O2 back into the atmosphere. You know, anything that comes from hydrocarbons, fuels that we burn, things like that, things that we look at as pollutants. Anything these trees pull out of the atmosphere that we consider pollutants. That's one of the benefits of plantation management, pine plantation management, is that because it's so actively growing, it does a lot of carbon sequestration.
Those effects, along with efficiency and sustainability, are the focus of a 5-year, $20 million research project being conducted throughout the southern United States, known as PINEMAP.
Our overall goal is to increase carbon sequestration by 15% and increase the efficiency of fertilizer application by 25%. So in other words, we're looking to increase growth, increase the positive benefits of forestry by taking more CO2 out of the atmosphere, and to reduce the cost of management in terms of the fertilizer application. In Oklahoma, our main focus is to look at the effects of rainfall reduction in a scenario that might represent a future drier climate.
As we see changes in climate, whether it's long-term or just, climate cycles, things like that, it's going to show us what loblolly pine does and how it responds to different climatic conditions that it might encounter.
If you look at the southern United States, it's a carbon sequestration basket for the United States, and roughly about 16% of the carbon that's sequestered in the United States is sequestered in the southern United States forests. Okay, and what we're looking at doing is looking at trying to figure out the impact of global climate change on that sequestering, how we can impact and increase sequestering of that carbon throughout the plantations and the forests of the southern United States, and also increase the efficiency of our silvicultural practices in there, fertilization, those types of things. So that's the gist of what we're trying to do.
So looking at all of that, why is then, as we look at the southern United States, why is Oklahoma such a great place to be doing that research?
Good question. Oklahoma's, most people don't think of Oklahoma as a timber state, because our timber's sequestered in the southeast counties and the eastern counties of the state. But in reality, what's happening is we're on the very fringe of the southern pine belt. Okay, you go a little bit further west of here and pine disappear. So what we're actually doing is in Oklahoma, we can actually simulate some of the environmental conditions that are going to be occurring potentially throughout the South with the decreased amount of rainfall, the infrequencies of the thunderstorms and the rain events we have here. So Oklahoma is a great place to do this kind of research. We're kind of on the cusp of what might be considered global climate change in the southern United States.
The USDA-funded PINEMAP project involves research teams from 11 land-grant universities, 8 research cooperatives, the U.S. Forest Service, and the Southeast Climate Consortium. It is an impressive coalition of scientists and educators and is already generating a mountain of data. The figures from the Oklahoma portion of the project alone are astounding.
The data we downloaded today was from about the last month and a half, and there were over 1 million values collected off of one replication. The biggest part of the data that's collected here comes from sap flux probes in the trees themselves. What that's made up of is 2 thermocouples inside the tree there with a heater on one and the other's unheated. And as photosynthesis takes place, it actually changes the temperature of the sap that's flowing through the trees and the conductive tissues there.
I asked graduate assistant Cassandra Meek to show us some of the data collection tools being used.
This is a LICOR portable photosynthetic system, and we can actually measure CO2. We can measure the release of CO2 if we're interested in respiration, and we can also measure the uptake of CO2 if we're interested in photosynthesis. Right.
All right, now let's talk about what else you're measuring out here. I know there's a lot of tools.
Yes, we are also measuring light interception.
Okay.
And basically what this little wand does is it measures just photons of light. So what we'll do right here is I'll go into a sunny area and I'll take measurements at the 4 cardinal angles of full sun, and then I'll come in and I'll measure. I'll just try to get a representative measurement all throughout the plot, so some under, some out here. And then what we basically do is we'll subtract those values from the full sun to let us know how much of the canopy has picked up light.
We'll mine that data for specific relationships related to temperature, humidity, solar radiation, and soil moisture, and be able to really fine-tune some estimates of local Oklahoma productivity levels based on changing those environmental parameters. Then we're using this as a research platform to conduct some Oklahoma-specific research. In particular, we're looking at water use, we're looking at stand dynamics and canopy development, and also at the gas exchanger, the photosynthetic rates as it relates to the drier environment.
And that gives Will reason to believe that this research will directly impact Oklahomans.
With 30 million acres of pine plantation southwide and 1.5 million acres approximately in Oklahoma alone, which in fact supports a $1 billion per year industry in Oklahoma, I feel confident our research will have a real positive effect on the environment as well as on the bottom line of pine plantation management.
Hi, I'm Al Sutherland with your Mesonet Weather Report. We should stop being surprised about Oklahoma weather, but just when we think we have a grasp on our weather, it surprises us again. The latest surprise was the cold weather last weekend. On Saturday, the nighttime lows followed a typical pattern with colder air in the northern part of the state. Below freezing temps were recorded at Mesonet sites north of a line from Elk City to Kingfisher to Pawnee early Sunday morning. There was also an area with freezing temperatures in northeast Oklahoma. The surprise was Sunday night into early Monday morning. Freezing temperatures were recorded at Mesonet sites stretched across Oklahoma. In the southwest, Mangum recorded a low of 26. Bernieville in far south central dropped to 29. Tahlequah in the east had a 29 low. Stillwater hit 29, while nearby Lake Carl Blackwell recorded a low of 26. Camargo, way out west, also had a low of 26 degrees. Boise City, the only site in the Panhandle below freezing, was 29. These freezing temperatures nipped crop tops. Upper leaves of soybeans near Chickasha show frost injury. The lower leaves are still green. We'll have to wait through October to find out if these plants have enough green leaves and get enough warmer weather to mature the seed pods. Gary, what's our drought status?
Good morning, everybody. I hope you've all had a great dose of rain by the time you've watched this to help alleviate some of those drought conditions we still see across the state. Speaking of drought, let's take a look at the latest U.S. Drought Monitor map released on Thursday morning. As you can see, we have had some improvements over the last couple of weeks, especially after that great rainfall of 2 weeks ago. We now have severe drought in parts of central and southern Oklahoma, and improvement over the extreme drought that they had a couple of weeks ago. We still have that exceptional drought covering much of northern Oklahoma. In fact, that exceptional drought expanded a little bit further to the east in those areas that missed that last good rainfall. I'm going to give you an update on some pictures I showed you last year. This is, of course, my favorite place in the universe, the little farm pond just south of Buffalo up in northwest Oklahoma, where I fished at much of my life. This first picture is from May 2009, back when times were good. You can see lots of green grass surrounding the pond and basically full of water. Really good fishing at that time. By August 2010, however, the pond was nearly dry, with water you probably wouldn't want your livestock drinking. And then, of course, the next year, by May 2011, the pond was completely dry. And then each successive period, January 2012 until October 2012, the pond has remained dry. And that's indicative of what the ponds are going through up in northwest Oklahoma as the drought continues. What's happening to my favorite little fishing hole up in northwest Oklahoma is a good example of what we're hearing from across the state. Again, we just need a lot of rainfall, and we need it to keep on coming. That's it for this time. We'll see you next time on the Mesonet Weather Report.
Kim Anderson, our grain marketing specialist, joins us now. And Kim, you have the latest supply and demand numbers to talk about today.
Well, with wheat, the numbers that the market was watching was ending stocks. They came in at 654 million bushels. The market was expecting 630, so slightly above that. The 5-year average is 708 million bushels. In the report, the USDA raised the feeding of wheat, or the wheat used for feed, and lowered exports. World, the market was expecting the lower ending stocks. They got that. The world at 635 billion bushels. 6.35 billion bushels, get that number right, down 227 million. The average 6.54 billion bushels. They raised the production estimates for Australia, Russia, the European Union, also minor adjustments for Canada, Uruguay, and some other minor countries like that. In corn, they increased the production 21 million bushels. The market was expecting a slight decline in the bushels at 10.6 billion. It came in at 10.7 billion. Ending stocks, they lowered corn, that's the important number, lowered it to 114 million bushels to 619 million bushels. The market was expecting 648. Also, they lowered corn ending stocks estimates to 4.62 billion bushels compared to a 5-year average of 5.39 billion bushels.
Okay, and now that you've run the numbers for us, what is your take now that you've had a chance to look at it?
Well, there's some minor adjustments. Of course, corn prices, they were initially up, 35, 40 cents. They backed off to around 25 cents higher. Wheat prices increased about 15 cents, backed off later in the morning to about 10 cents higher. I think that corn prices are going to remain relatively strong. Their corn stocks are tight. Wheat stocks are getting tighter, and the market's watching those relatively close, especially the feeding of wheat around the world. The market December contract trading between $8.69 and $9.57. It's been trading in the low end of that range. I think it's going to move up to around the $9 part in the middle of the range and continue sideways until we get some information from Australia and Argentina.
Okay, and speaking of world news, some of the information out of Russia having some impact on the markets.
Right. You know, we've been talking about Russia, you know, selling all their exportable wheat and not being able to participate in the export market. And Putin met with the industry. He says they are not going to put an embargo or stop the wheat exports. Also, Ukraine, they met and they're going to increase their wheat available for exports by a million metric ton.
Okay, and finally, here at home, wheat prices.
I think they're going to stay in that sideways pattern until, you know, something happens in the market somewhere. It's got to be something unexpected.
Okay, Kim Anderson, our grain marketing specialist. We'll see you later.
Hi, welcome to Shop Stop. We've talked a lot in the past about removing screws or bolts that have been broke off, but now we've got another method that you can use depending on the tools that you might have available to you.
Yeah, this is a little less aggressive style, but if you've got one of these vibrating pencils and you have a screw broke off that is flush, you might try using one of these. And how that works is you turn on your pencil and you get it at an angle, and you start going around like that, and you can see that it vibrates that screw around. Where you can get a hold of it and screw it on out then. So that's a little easy way to get screws that are a little loose out of there.
So there's a tip for using that vibrating pencil and removing a screw that's been broke off.
Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time on Shop Stop.
It's that time of year where we bring the livestock marketing specialist out to the wheat pastures because cattle producers are getting kind of excited about what's growing behind us.
You know, we're on track to have some wheat forage this year. Wheat planting progress in Oklahoma is about 59% completed at this point. The percent emerged is on track with the 5-year average. So if we can get a little more rain in the next month or so to push it along a little farther, we're going to have some wheat pasture, and that's certainly a big difference from where we were this time last year.
And of course, cattle producers see the wheat and they're thinking or starting to put pencil to paper about the stockers.
You know, the stocker market really offers some opportunity. There's pretty good value of gain. Prices are high. They're moving up a little bit in the last week or so, and I think that's reflecting the increased demand that's probably happening out there. The one caution I have is these lightweight, very lightweight calf prices tend to go up, you know, proportionally more, and that erodes the value of gain a little bit. So I encourage producers to pencil out several different weights, from the really lightweight, you know, light 4-weight kind of cattle to maybe considering something that's in the 5 weights and even pushing up towards 600 pounds because in many cases the value of gain is a little bit better there, particularly if you're going to graze these cattle only for dual purpose and you're going to pull them off in February or March. If you're going to own them all the way through May or into May for graze out, then the lighter weight cattle probably make a little more sense because you've got a little more time to capture that better value of gain at the bigger weights.
Okay, what's your advice on the cow-calf pairs right now?
Well, on the cow-calf side, you know, obviously the strength in the market is encouraging from a marketing calf standpoint. I think we're in pretty good shape. I don't expect to see much seasonal weakness in this calf price as we go forward. I think the supplies are very tight, and because of the wheat pasture situation, there'll be plenty of demand for those lightweight calves. So I think we're in pretty good shape from that standpoint for the cow-calf producers.
Okay, so let's talk about culling the cattle. What should producers be thinking about?
After we wean the calves, we always think about culling the cows, and so we've been watching that. Individual producers are making that decision based on where they're at with forage supplies and so on. Nationwide, we're watching that number much more closely, trying to figure out what has happened to the cow herd this year because of the drought situation in many parts of the country. You know, the indications are that we'll have a relatively normal cow culling season. It could go up or down a little bit from normal depending on a producer's individual situation, but it looks like at this point we're going to end up certainly with enough net cow culling this year to indicate some additional liquidation. I expect the beef cow herd will be down probably on the order of 1.5% or so when we get the annual inventory numbers next year.
Okay, Daryl Pill, Livestock Marketing Specialist here at Oklahoma State University.
Now to a training opportunity with OK Fire, a weather-based program that helps fire managers across the state in making decisions about wildland fires. To ensure users are getting the most from the website, Oklahoma Mesonet is holding training sessions over the next several weeks. The goal? To teach those who fight wildfires and do prescribed burning how to use the OK Fire system.
This year we're going to offer abbreviated evening sessions, about 2.5 hours, designed for those who, like rural fire departments, who have full-time jobs during the day and can't take off to go to our full-day workshops, which we also will be offering. So we'll be having an evening workshop followed by a full-day workshop where people actually use computers to interact with the site.
The workshops are for both fire managers new to the system as well as those just needing a refresher. Workshops will be held in 10 different locations around the state. To register, go to our website, sunup.okstate.edu.
That does it for us this week. Remember, you can see our stories anytime on our website, sunup.okstate.edu. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. From the research station at Lahoma, I'm Lyndall Stout. We'll see you next time at SUNUP.